Welcome to my accelerated arts program. So these are not in the basic curriculum. I did try to add them in one of the subjects, but I'm not sure if they're going to be taught there. So we will start. Okay. So this is going to be a 2-day thing. Next week ulit. So, what we're going to be talking about today is developing Filipino identity in the arts, your arts. How are you going to develop it? For you to develop it, you need to know art history with Philippine context. So, we are going to be heavy into art history, or sorry, history, period. So, you know the context of where our art comes from and what influenced you and what um, you can do. Kasi ultimately you guys are going to have to do that on your own, figure out where your art is based on your influence. What you choose to get influenced in will be up to you. Next week we're going to be doing 21st century artists, so everything about the industry, what you need to know, and a little bit about fixing your portfolio. I know you guys will have portfolio. And so, diba, you are in Humes.
Yes po.
In grade 12 you'll be doing your own portfolio, so this will come in handy. Tapos
Yes.
Alicia, you've done the portfolio, so I'm gonna try to help you fix it for college. See, a lot of what's this students who will go into an art college or art university need a portfolio. Alrighty, so our arts program is crammed. This is from DepEd. It's talagang crammed. I don't know who made it. Meron silang art background but not enough. Clubs can only augment your skills, but clubs cannot give you the basic knowledge. Sorry, wrong spelling. That's basic knowledge. So for the next part of your journey, if you have the basic, you can go from there. Kaysa yung wala. There is an advantage. There is an advantage for those who know the basics versus those who are self-taught. Those who are self-taught, that they feel they don't need this, they don't need that. It's an uphill battle, but they can do it. But those who have already the core knowledge of arts, then they go from there. It's parang easier, di ba? That is why people who go to an art college or a university have the advantage. Yung mga iba na tawag na classically trained, ito yun. They have the core knowledge kasi. So here are the problems that I'm seeing right now, which is the reason why I made this accelerated arts program. One is lack of skills, especially the newer graduates ngayon in the art industry. When we get graduates, kulang. And some companies will invest time for training, but not all. There are some na will not. And problem two is they say, oh, kasi we lack motivation. Okay, we will find ways to motivate ourselves. Because ultimately, we can only be the ones to motivate ourselves. Not even, not even our what's this teachers, and not even our parents can motivate us. Kasi, well, one sec. Somebody is trying to enter. Ano ba ito? Key talaga is always asking for the link kahit na nandyan na sa taas. Anyways, okay, let's move on. Okay, so basis for your judgment is arts in the Philippine context because you need the basic foundation. And then I will try to show you the path through what I do in work or what's the industry like, what's art schools are like, and maybe if you don't like to go into an art school, you can go into an online school. So I have some students who do the online route. After COVID, well, okay, technically we're still in that COVID age. Um, the art schools or any kind of schools actually have shifted online or have an online option, which is good for everyone, diba? We don't have to go abroad just to study this. We have this already. All right, so let's start. Philippine history or Philippine art scene with context. Let's start from the very, very, very beginning. We are not 7,107 islands. That myth was debunked a few years ago. Matagal siya nag-spread sa DepEd because I don't know why. Itong DepEd natin medyo mabagal. But, because of Google Maps and Google Earth, you can literally count the islands now. Now, when they counted it, this is our exact number of islands. Dumami tayo. 7,641 islands, whether it is high tide or low tide. Okay? So we are more or less 300,000 square kilometers of land. And meron tayong Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Palawan over here, this little leg, belongs to Luzon. Okay, so we were named after a Spanish king, but before we were named Philippines, mali itong date na ito eh. Before that, they actually called us Las Islas San Lazaro. Why? Because Magellan bumped into Homonhon during the feast day of San Lazaro. So that's kind of how they named most of the islands. Kaninong feast day yon or who's the explorer who bumped into it. So in his case, he decided to name it after, okay, kaninong feast day ngayon of the saint. And then, today, March 15, San Lazarus. Okay, Saint Lazarus it is. This island is now Saint Lazarus. Pero dito lang, hindi niya inakala ang laki pala ng Pilipinas. Okay, in fact, when they conquered it, they only conquered this part and umakyat sila because they really wanted Manila. They conquered here until they conquered the whole here. They were not able to conquer this part. See, this one, this, and this. This was never under Spain. Naging Pilipinas lang siya, naging part of Philippines lang siya during the American era. So that will also influence their artwork. Okay, let's give you a historical timeline. Just so, ano. Hi, Gabe. All right. So Magellan landed in Homonhon 1521, March 15, 1521. He did not discover us because we were never lost. In fact, we were in everybody's maps already. Ang ano nga nilang controversial note that I got from Ambeth Ocampo is he knew us, he knew about Manila in particular, and he wanted Manila. It's just so happened mali ang kanyang landing. Humunhon siya nahulog. And he thought he was in India and he called everybody there Indios because Indian, but you know, it's not. And it wasn't until 1565 before we actually got conquered by Miguel Lopez de Legazpi. So lahat ng mga Legazpi village, Legazpi anything na ganyan is attributed to him, and you should not like, oh wow, Legazpi sounds like expensive village and all. Yeah, but if you only knew the bloody history, what happened is they got the rest of the islands through very unfair means. Kunwari, friends, we're lost travelers. So alam naman tayo mga Pilipino, 'di ba? We're very very nice people and we're very hospitable. Kung meron tayong someone na guest, kahit stranger, 'di ba? We welcome them into our house. We give them food, we give them drink, kahit na stranger sila, kasi kawawa ka naman stranger ka. That's really part of our culture and the way we are. So when they saw this, they took advantage of it while we were sitting down with them, having food with them, and giving them refreshment from their long voyage. They turn around, or we turn around, and suddenly they stab us literally in the back, or in their case, they shot us in the back. So bloody, and they're trying to, I don't know why, erase this from our history. So there is no history class in high school, which is sad. And these are the types of things that you need to know. I don't know why tinanggal nilang history in class, but these are the ones who is going to be influencing our art, a big chunk of it. Now, we'll jump. way ahead. In between here, of course, ito banda, you will have sila Rizal, sila Luna, sila Hidalgo. 1898, December 24, the Spain sold us for $24 million to the US. However, they also sold Mindanao, which was not their territory. So when the US came 1901, pretending to be our friend and heroes, or helping us in the war efforts, again they stabbed us in the back. And we have 50 years under the US. In between that 50 years, we have uh 4 years that we are under the Japanese occupation. In the Japanese occupation, kala natin war stopped arts, but I'll get into that later. No, art took a different turn, but it did have like underground roots during the Japanese occupation. We'll get into that then later. Finally, what we will call modern era is 1946 after. So when we were granted our independence, dyan na yung start ng ating modern era. Okay, so we'll get into that more in details. Now, this is from Michael Crichton. Michael Crichton is the writer for Jurassic Park. If you don't know history, then you don't know anything. And that is the reason why when I talk about art, it has to have context in history. Okay, so don't mind these. I just need these. Kalimutan ko i-delete itong nasa baba. We will talk about the three great kingdoms in Luzon. I'll just touch up a bit on the Mindanao later. So there are three kingdoms: the Namayan kingdom, the Rajanate of Tunduk, and the Confederate of Majaas. Okay, let's go to the Namayans first. So the Namayan kingdom was the dominant force in the Pasig area. So what is now the Pasig area, Parañaque, Pasay, all the way just before Tondo, dyan, those are Namay. Basically, most of Metro Manila falls to the Namayans. Okay, so they existed from 10th to 16th century, just before the Spanish invasion. So yung mga stab sa back ni ng Spain had Namayan blood. What's interesting about Namayan is it's dito tayo galing and we actually have traces of that today. Let me show you. Okay. So first of all, the kingdom relied heavily on trade. Metro Manila area siya. And the Namayan is actually Hindu Buddhists. Would you believe that? Hindu Buddhists ang Manila from 10th century to 16th century. Okay, so we had ties with China, Brunei, India, and everybody else because they all go to the Pasig River, especially Tondo area, to trade. Yung mga pinya cloth, embroidery, masonry, yung mga stone, marble, mga ganyan. Tinapa or dried fish, cigars, bricks, sugar. All that. All that came. Tsaka yung mga Chinese goods, there is a reason for that. How many centuries ago, between 10th and 16th, maraming kaaway si China. And pagkaaway ka ni China, China will refuse to trade with you. And bad news yun because especially if trading is your biggest source of income. There was a time because galit sila kay Japan because naging independent ng Japan. If you know the history of Japan, di ba parang supposed to be they sent some princes over to Japan to look for some sort of herb, some sort of cure for their emperor. Hindi na bumalik sila and they set up Japan, the country, instead. So silang naging feudal doon, sila naging emperors of Japan. Bad mood sa kanila si China. So China said, I'm not going to trade with you. And they're like, please trade with us. Okay, okay, fine. I will trade with you only once in 6 years. So can you imagine you will trade with China only once in 6 years? What happens in the interim na 6 years? Sayang yung goods mo. And you can't buy din. China was still the largest producer of a lot of stuff, even back then. So what's this? The Japanese and all yung mga kaaway ni China na ayaw niya mag-trade with goes to the Philippines, Pasig River, and Tondo area, they will sell their goods there. So that's their roundabout way of selling. So they actually are incongruent with the next, the Rajanate of Tunduk, also heavy on the Indian influence. So they were Hindu Buddhist, but a lot of them were also Muslim. So it's like intermingling. Alam mo tayo mga Pilipino, di ba parang mix-mix? I don't know about you guys, but if you know the Chinoy culture here in the Philippines, we kind of practice several religion. We will either practice Catholic or Protestantism, Christianity, or something like that. But at the same time, we will go once a month to the king or the temple, whether you're a Taoist or Buddhist. Yeah. So ganyan din sila. They're kind of like mix. So there's like Indian, Muslim, wala pang Christianity at that time, but the Dutch were already trading with us. So we have Indo-Malayan blood from the Namayans or the Maisapans, that's what they're also called. But we also had treaties, so we are intermarrying with the Borneans, the Zulus from down south, and everybody else. So that's the thing about what became the Filipino culture. We love taking in other cultures as our own. Dito pa lang may kita mo na mahilig tayo mag-mix and match. All right. So these are the streets or place names that are still alive today. If you go around, especially in Metro Manila, you will see some street places na ito like Sampaloc, Pinaglabanan, which is in Mandaluyong, Taytay, Rizal, Quiapo, Pateros, Taguig, Parañaque, Makati, Pasay. Those are all places. Pasay, by the way, is the name of a princess of Namayan. And they named a place, nung binigay nila yung, okay, this area is for Princess Pasay, kanya na to. And that place became known as Pasay. So, Dilao is in Malate. Actually, Dilao is katabi na, actually, it's part of Malate. Ngayon, we call it Paco. So, the area now called Paco was Dilao. So, may history din yan. I have a book about it. It's called Dilao because of turmeric. That area is full of turmeric. Um, if you know about Filipino naming of our streets and even of our people, we usually attribute them to a description. Like, yan, Dilaw, because maraming, doon. Sampalok, because there's a lot of sampalok plant there. Quiapo is a water cabbage. Maraming doon. So, Makati is a type of grass. So, all of those are attributed or named that way because of that. So, see, pati sila na influence. So, yan. All right, let's go straight to the Rajanate of Tundok. Rajanate because Araha is the one who takes care of them. So the Rajanate of Tunduk, ganun din, mixed. It's like may Buddhist, may Muslim, but religion never really defined us. So religion never really defined them. All right, so ang Rajanate of Tunduk is not actually in Tondo, Maynila, but it's near there. Okay, so the kingdom of Maynila, sila itong nag-start. Maynila because Nila means indigo plant. Maynila because there's a lot of indigo plant in the Manila area that time. Ngayon wala na of course, but that is the reason why Maynila is called Manila. So ngayon, if Tagalog na written ang Manila, it's not Manila anymore, it's Maynila. I don't know if you guys saw that. Sinong napadaan sa Manila area ngayon? Big signs nila doon has the Y, Maynila, because that is the what's his original name, may Y. All right, so the name Luzon is also Chinese in origin, Luzon. So that's ito, the place of song, parang ganon. So it's Chinese ang nagbigay ng name na yon. So Tondo was the major trading port. But the Rajanate of Tunduk was not in Tondo. It is in the Manila area, but the Tondo area and the Santa Ana area belongs to the Namayan. They existed along with the Namayans. Ang ginawa nila is, simple lang yan. After they made a treaties, they intermarried. So when they intermarried, mix. So the Namayan kingdom kind of evolved into the Rajahnate of Tunduk. They saw each other, they existed beside each other until for some reason the Namayans kept producing girls. They did not have enough boys. So the Rajahnate of Tunduk's like, I've got prince, you got princess. Yun, there you go. Sila ang nadatnan ni Legazpi. Sila ang gistab in the back ni Legazpi. All right, so the first mention of Tunduk was in the Laguna Copper Plate. So that's 900 AD. It implied there are trading relations already. So when Tondo was established, it was at first a city-state lang. So they had to elect. They were quite democratic, actually. They can elect the Lakan or the Raha, who's going to rule all and each barangay. Because even back then, we were already divided into barangay. So yung ating mga system of barangay leaders or cabeza de barangay or chairman, and then your tanods, that came from this. That system came from this. We kind of just adapted it into, because that came from that. So the local governing body is your cabeza de barangay, also known as your barangay chairperson. And then you have the tanods under him. But he will ultimately answer to the mayor. The mayor, who is the higher office, and the mayors will answer to the president. Ganyan din yon. So back then, ang president nila is the lakan or the raha. And then you have certain tiers. So the what's this Rajanate of Tunduk was influenced by the Majapahit Empire, which was Javanese, Hindu, Buddhist, and very strong in Southeast Asia at that time. So mix din. Now let's get to the Confederate of Majaas, the Tagalog. Pababa naman tayo ngayon, a little pababa. This was in the history books. I don't know kung naabutan nyo because, I don't know, they're deleting history in our curriculum, which is, I'm very angry about that. So let me guys tell you, once upon a time, there were 10 Bornean Datus who fled the harsh Sultan Makatunaw of Borneo. So, remember yung system na merong sa top and then pababa, ganyan. So, the Sultan and then under him were his datus. These 10 just can't take it anymore. So, what they did is they boarded several balangays, the boat, took their families and slaves and whoever gusto, and sailed. They landed in Panay, which was that time ruled by the Aitas, King Marikudo. Ang ginawa nila is, we've got some stuff here. Wanna buy it? We wanna buy a piece of land. Okay. So, okay. This land, binili nila. They bought it with gold and a very ornate salakot, or sukod or salakot. That time, it's very intricate. Alam mo, Muslim art is very intricate in details. Some say it's like pure gold. Anyways, that was enough to pay for a big land called Hantik. Later, because the Spanish cannot uh, pronounce it, they called it Antique. So, it's Hantik. Tapos, Irong-Irong, as well, hindi nila ma-pronounce, they called it Iloilo. So, that became, kaya siya confederate because they were 10 datus. So, ang ginawa nila is, actually, ano sila, what's this? Nag-elect sila ng leader. Their elected leader was Datu Puti. Yeah, the guy who was named after the soy sauce. Or let's just say the soy sauce was named after him. Okay, so many Chinese chronicles actually already documented itong Confederate of Majaas. Some also called them Mai. And for those who are looking at biblical context, some people are saying that we are the biblical Ophir. We are in the Bible. So anyways, Datu Puti left some of the datus in Panay, Antique, Iloilo. Remember, 10 naman sila. And then the rest of them went up, Taal region. So in the Taal region, they said he made a 40-kilometer road around the district. You can't see it now. It's flooded over. It's now a sea. But it was said to be the Philippines' first highway, an actual highway. So there he established the Kingdom of the Tagalogs. Up Taal region, Laguna area, papuntang ano yun Laguna de Bay, and then aakyat yun ng Pasig. Tagalog is not Tagailog. Tagalog actually came from Alog, Tag-Alog. Because according to Ambeth Ocampo, if it was Tagailog, then we would be called Tagilogs. But it is not. Alog means river delta. Ilog means river. So Alog, river delta, doon sa side, the ano ba, the embankment. So Tag-Alog, Tagalog. Okay, so their Tagalog area is Balayan, Bataan, Quezon, so umakyat na din, Rizal, Cavite, Romblon, and Palawan, as well as yung mga Panay, Antique, and Iloilo. Malaki sila. But they all follow Datu Puti, their leader. Unfortunately, wait. Ito pala. The Kingdom of Kumintang, which is ito, after Datu Puti, of course, di ba tatanda na sila, the next leaders nila, one of the 10 Bornean datus was actually very young. But hereditary ang pagiging datu kasi nila. So iba-iba yung system nila. In their case, it's not that democrat. It's quite democrat. Weird, no? Pagiging datu is not democratic. Pagiging datu is hereditary. But among them, to elect one leader out of the 10 was democratic. So their first leader was Datu Puti. They elected him to be their leader. However, after Datu Puti established the Kingdom of Tagalog, he said, I'm going to go home because my wife is still hostage. You guys have your wives. My wife is still hostage. And then I want to bring other people here. So he went there. Unfortunately, nobody's heard of him. So people think he got killed, he got lost, something. So nobody knows what happened to him. So they elected another person, one of the youngest datus, but he was also the most forward thinking. So grabe ang kanyang he's a genius in the trading world. So he became the leader and he called the Majaas Confederate, now the Kingdom of Kumintang. So later the Chinese called it Mai. All right, here is the bloody part. Fast forward, we are with Legazpi. Legazpi came and said, Hi, we're lost, tired. It's been a 6 months journey. And they're like, oh, kawawa naman kayo. Sige, here's some food, dancing, all that. Oh, would you like a tour? I'm like, yeah, we'd love a tour. Okay, so they went, tour, around the Taal area. And then the 300 gunmen kaboomed everybody. And itong ating mga we had cannons already, by the way. So it's not as if we were helpless or anything. It's just that we did not expect. Diba tayo mga very hospitable tayo. So we are very open and we didn't expect them to kill us, not after we fed them. There. That is how they took the Tagalog kingdoms. And then they took the Tondo area the same way. Hi, we're lost and tired. And we're like, oh, kawawa ka naman. Oh, come in. Here's some food, here's some ganyan. Same thing happened when when they came in, what's this? Intramuros. Ever wonder why it's called Intramuros? Intra, inside. Muros, Muslim. It was Muslim that time. It was under the Bruneians at that time. And then we want to go inside the city. Hi, okay, pasok sila doon sa Intramuros. Stab you in the back. And that's how they got Intramuros. And they named the Intramuros Fort Santiago with a reason why. Because Santiago or Saint James was the guy who converted Spain from becoming Moors to Catholicism. So they thought, we're the same. Therefore, we will name this area Santiago, Fort Santiago. It's quite bloody, right? Our history. I'll get bloodier. Okay, let's talk about other Muslim kingdoms down south. Muslim missionaries, yes, they had their own missionaries from Arabia, Brunei, Sumatra, Indonesia, was already here since 9th century. Okay, Chinese trader has recorded them and they've been recording themselves, so they've been here earlier. The Dutch was aware of us. A lot of people were aware of us. So they tried to whitewash the history and saying, no, we just blundered into and discovered the Philippines. But it's not. Okay, down south, there are four Muslim kingdoms in Mindanao. Ngayon, only two exist. The others have died out na. There's the Sultanate of Sulu and the Sultanate of Maguindanao. I've met the Sultan of Sulu. Nice guy, very down to earth. You'll never even know he was a sultan because I met him in Manila, and when he's there, he's incognito. So he'll be like ordinary person. You wouldn't even know. Okay. So Muslim influences also varied because of trade. Remember, Arabian na Muslim is very different from Bruneian na Muslim, na Indonesian, Sumatran Muslim. Iba ang kanilang style of clothing, iba ang kanilang architecture, iba yung everything. So the same thing happens dito sa atin because we also have our own influence and their influence. Medyo mix, di ba? So we became kind of interesting, interesting and different because of that. Okay, so why do you guys need to know this history? Why did teacher Maita spend 30 minutes teaching you guys pre-colonial history? And we're not even in the colonial era yet. Because I am very frustrated when we are whitewashed, okay? You need to know that we did not dress like this. Not everybody dressed like this. Maybe our slaves, maybe some of the Aitas dressed like this, but not everybody dressed like this. Especially not in Manila. Especially not in 15th century Manila. We dressed very sophisticated. Remember, we were trading silk and piña long before the Spanish. So we had very intricate embroideries, very intricate designs for our clothing. This fashion design over here that I drew, I got from or was influenced by a book that I found in CCP library. I forgot the book. Kasi ano na eh, nag-COVID na noon eh, hindi ko nabalikan yung book. But I was in the library drawing some of the designs. So some of the drawings in this presentation was me and I got it from there. So even before the Spanish came, 'di ba we know na in Bulacan area, grabe ang kanilang embroidery doon. When we go to certain area, grabe ang kanilang beadwork doon. Because we knew that long before they came here. We knew how to carve very intricate things. We knew how to do metallurgy. Kaya we have very intricate ano din, jewelry. So we were not this. We were this. And that is one of the things that I want you guys to be aware of. Kasi perception will dictate your influences din. If you perceive na yan tayo mga bahag climbing in the trees, that's all we'll ever think of ourselves. But we're not. 14th, 15th, even 10th century, we were very sophisticated people. We had our own governing system. We had our own kingdoms plural. So I don't want our way of thinking to be also whitewashed. Okay, so yeah, we have a lot of Western influences now and other Asian influences, but that's also part of our culture. We love to embrace other cultures with us. But I don't want you guys to forget your roots or the journey that we took to get here. Because that is our ancestors' journey. And if you forget that, that won't be part of your journey anymore. Okay, so we will move on. Okay, so these are some of the drawings that I've gotten from the book. I copied them. This style na ganito did not originate in Spain. We already had this style of clothing even before they did. Because remember, the Dutch were already trading with us, so we could get top hats. And we love hair accessories here, boys and girls. So we had salakots for women and boys. We had little hair ornaments. We had crowns. We had beadwork. We also had top hats, iba-ibang styles of top hats traded with us. We had handbags, iba-ibang kinds of handbags, also traded and influenced from others because Tondo area was a trading port. And hindi lang dyan. There are also many other trading areas because the Chinese brought goods around, circulated goods around the country. When I was in Lake Cebu, they had what's this mga little pottery shards there, and when they had it dated, it was Ming Dynasty vase. It's that old. So Ming Dynasty was what, ninth, 10th century, and Lake Cebu is inland. It's up the mountains. It means dinaanan sila doon ng mga Chinese. So you can't get Ming vase unless, di ba, somebody traded it with them. Either umakyat to ng Chinese or bumaba sila and traded with the Chinese somewhere near and then brought it with them. In any case, even back then, a Ming vase or Chinese porcelains were expensive. They were considered luxury goods. Hindi tayo poor. Even yung ating mga, what's this, normal citizen, hindi lahat slaves ng dato. It's not like dato and all the slaves. No, there were different types of classes here in the Philippines. Merong slaves, merong freemen, and may ano tayo, mga system of caste. Just like the, I think that's influenced from the Indians. Eh. But, but, ang ating mga alipins here are actually treated well because that's also that's actually parang a big Muslim influence na kumbaga if you can't treat your slave, if you cannot feed, clothe and treat your slave well, you don't have the right to a slave, parang something like that. So if you were to own, like you are a very rich timawa, freeman timawa, you had to have clothed your slave. You have to have like a hut just for your slaves. So kung marami kang slaves, malaki yung hut mo or marami kang huts for your slaves. You have to be able to feed your slaves. You have to be able to clothe your slaves. And you need to have enough people to manage your slave din. Kasi anong gagawin mo sa 100 slaves kung hindi mo, you cannot micromanage everyone. So you need also people who are free people that you hire to manage your slaves for you. So, 'di ba, ang pagiging slave din is not so bad in this country. It's not like in other country na talagang, how the black was treated. Here sa atin, medyo iba eh. Because even the slaves can complain to the dato and say, Dato, yung aking master, alam mo, hindi niya ako pinapakain. And that's a crime kapag nagutom ang isang person under you. That's a crime sa kanila. Diba? So, you either pay a fine or set the slave free or something, or the slave will be taken away from you. So there. Tribe versus kingdom. What's the difference? Let's just go over this quick. Tribes are linked by ethnicity. So there could be like a different tribe. Yung ethnicity nila is what binds them together. So either they speak a certain way, their culture is the same, but they can be spread out or confined to small areas. Basta they are bound by ethnicity. Kingdom naman is recognized by territory. They answer to one king, lakan, or governing body. And then they have like levels. Depends on how their kingdom is arranged. So it could be like sultan, datos, cabezas, and tanod. So yan, iba-iba yan. Okay, so what influenced Philippine art? Those are in the peripheries of our mind. They are still part of our history, even when we whitewash them, even if we don't want to acknowledge them. They're still there. We still have little cultural influences that seep into them na hindi natin matanggal-tanggal. And I want you guys to try to recognize those. So, some of those are yung ating po and opo because that did not come from the Spanish. And sa atin lang yan. Wala ganyan sa ibang ano eh. Wala ganyan sa ibang cultures. Maybe they have their own form of honorifics, but for us, it's po and opo. Uh, Being very hospitable That's also very us. Being very welcoming to other culture. That's very us. Other cultures kasi are xenophobic. They hate other cultures. Sa atin baliktad. We love other cultures. And that actually shows because we are, if you try to define the Filipino race, we are a chop suey of race. There's no pure blooded Filipino. Ano ba talagang pure blood? No, what is a pure blooded Filipino? We're like a chop suey of everything. You have Chinoys, you have Nikijinkai, which is Japanese. You have different what's this subgroups within the community. Diba? You have your mestizos. We are all iba-iba. There is not one single ano ba ang Filipino, diba? You cannot define our DNA. So we will define ourselves through our culture. Kasi we can't exactly uh, define our culture via geography because we as Filipinos are spread out. Because remember, uh, ang biggest export natin is human beings. OFW. OFW is our biggest export, which is actually powering 40% of our total GDP here in the Philippines. So alamin nyo yan. A lot of our OFW, sometimes 10 years abroad or 20 years abroad, but they will ultimately come home to retire here. And they will ultimately come home because they know they are Filipinos by blood. So they might love to work abroad, but ultimately home is here. Home is where the heart is. Please take note, we did not get conquered in 1521. We got conquered in 1564, 65, some of that time. Okay, so our pre-colonial influences are tribes, Muslims from Arabia, Muslim kingdoms from Asia, which is Brunei, Malaysia, Borneo, Indonesia, the Chinese, which is a very big part, the Majapahit Empire because it's the latest, and the Hindu because it's also the latest ones to actually come here. So medyo mas malaki-laki. Now we will go to the colonization era. So March 1521, Magellan landed in Homonhon. He had treaties with the locals, but in exchange, sabi nila, okay, we'll be your allies, but you have to defeat Lapu-Lapu. Okay, Lapu-Lapu, whose Muslim name is Kalipulaku. Uh, they went there. You guys know what happened. He died in battle. Okay, so the 1717 na lang ang survivors with only one boat because binagyo sila. So from three boats, naging one boat na lang. Led by Sebastian Elcano, which is yung parang valet ni what's his name? Magellan. Siya na lang ang bumalik. Sila. See, the 17 survivors went back to Spain in shame because niwaldas nila yung milyones na yon. Trying to find the Spice Island, trying to find Manila, trying to find something. So, in between, they tried to send others, but they didn't quite make it. Because remember, we also had cannons. Kala nyo ba Spain lang may cannon? So, where do you think cannons came from? Arabia and those areas. Uh, no, Spain, mm-mm, nope. So we had cannons, we had hell of a better fighter than them kasi pagdating nila dito sa atin, di ba naka-armor sila? And ang init-init. Tayo dito, kaya when we fight, we don't dress as much. Baliktad tayo. If it's fighting time, we don't wear as much stuff as them. We have yung shield natin and we have the sword and we had our cannons in the back and then we have the archers there at the top. So we had a strategy and they died. So they had to think, okay, we have to think something better. We need to like conquer these islands. How do we do that? They sent an SOS to Roy Lopez de Legazpi, who was in Mexico at that time. How they conquered Mexico? The same. First, they came, kunwari, as their friends. We're lost and hungry. It's been such a long journey. Okay, here, have some food, have some drink, and I'll stab you in the back. The same thing that they said, oh, that's the type of guy that we need. So they sent him a letter, go to the San Lazago, di pa Pilipinas? Islas San Lazago, conquer them. The same way, brutally as you did in Mexico. It's like, sure, I could do that. And that's what he did. That's what he did. Alrighty, so the Spanish tried to eradicate whatever our culture was back then, and they wanted to replace it with some warped European values. But at the same time, there's some things na hindi talaga nila ma-erase. So, our anitos became saints. Kaya we are so grabe ang ating celebration with the panagbenga, what's this, ano to, yung every January 17, Black Nazareno and all that. Once upon a time, can you just imagine na instead of Santo Niño doon, meron kang Anito statue, like a bulol statue there? Yun ang ginaganon-ganon natin. And they're like, no, 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 no. This is a more sophisticated looking same to. This is ancestor. This is Anito. Ang bigay sila ng ng Santo Niño. So tayo naman parang, oh, that's such a nice statue. Alam niyo yung mga porcelain statue ni Baby Jesus, di ba? Tapos with very ornate clothing. So they're like, oh nga no, it's just as small as, it looks like a child like our Anito, but wow, it has nice clothing and may crown pa of gold and stuff. And they're like, this is Anito. And they're like, okay, o sige, yun na yun. Naging ano na, ati-atihan. And then yung, kaya Black Nazareno, because we can relate to him. He's black like us, or dark complexion like us. Diba? So, the things that we believe, yung mga demons, creatures of legends, mga aswang, mga ganyan, they tried to demonize. Tayo naman, ang ating relationship with itong mga aswang and things like that is more like an exchange, diba? You make an offering in the woods, and then I will go inside the woods and pick herbs, pick mushroom and things. So, yun ang ating culture. They tried to demonize that. And then they tried to show that what we believed in is inferior. So our art became heavily Western Eurocentric. You can see that with Rizal, with Luna, with Hidalgo, and all their other contemporaries. All our national heroes, they went abroad to study. Kung hindi abroad to study, to Manila to study in Western European centric schools like Ateneo, Letran, UST, because those schools were here like hundreds of years. So ang ating mga techniques in art is also European centric. I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm just saying that's how it went. So, is it bad to be influenced by the West? So I will leave that to you. Me, in my view, it's neither bad nor good. It's how you incorporate it into your identity. Because if you're proud now, oh, it's I'm classically trained, I have gato, and it refined my technique. Well, that's good. It refined your technique. But don't forget where that journey led you. Okay, so little pockets of our identity. I hope it will not be erased. Okay. Okay, let's move on. The galleon trade. Now, this has one of the most influences, especially at that time. The galleon trade, also known as the Manila Acapulco trade, because the root is Manila, Acapulco, Mexico, and then Spain. So, lahat ng mga goods from Asia, kasi yan naman ang gusto nila sa Manila. We had the Chinese goods, because remember, they cannot conquer China anymore. It already got conquered by the British. Not just the British. It got divided into four. The sphere of influence, so it got chopped into four. But the largest part of it was the British. And remember, at that time, they hate the British. They hate the British, and the British had uh, India, which is comparable to China, and then they had the large part of China. They had Hong Kong, and they had Singapore. How can you get that? How can you beat that? So they needed to trade with them in such a way that I still hate your guts, but I need to trade with you. So they will all go to Manila, they will trade there, and then next they will go to Mexico, unload some goods, put in some goods, and then go to Spain. So ganun yung route nila. It did get I think 50 years lang ang galleon trade after it stopped because it is 90 days at sea. even with the latest technology na. Back then kasi Manila to Spain took them 6 months. Now it's only 3 months, Manila, Acapulco, Spain, because larger galleons, bigger sails, and then, we had some advancements. And engines came. And hindi na itong ating mga galleon, hindi na nila kaya to beat that. So the smaller boats that would trade were killing them. So nawala ang galleon trade. But the galleon trade kasi was monopolized by the Spanish government. They can't stop the smaller boats kasi, so nawala rin ang galleon trade. All right, so now we will go to the propaganda movement, Rizal and all his friends. So most of our propagandists used a pen name or a nom de plume for your paintbrush to get your, what's this, message across. And unlike the Katipunan movement, they opted for a more non-violent approach. Okay, so let's talk about Rizal. Rizal was actually your ultimate artist. He wrote, sculpted, and painted, and won in all three categories. And in his writing, it's not just poetry or novels. He also did essays. The reason why they sent his behind to Spain is because even here, diba, he studied in Ateneo and he studied in UST. When he was here, he kept winning essay writing contests. And his essays were really very well written. But his essays were very controversial. And I am saying this in a 13-year-old point of view. 13-year-old Rizal was writing heavy essays on pointing out, the discrepancies of society, discrepancies of the priles. It was good. There's no doubt that he won. He's that good and eloquent with his words. But he became parang ano ba, parang in hot waters. So what his brother did, Pasiano, his elder brother, he got his cousin's what's this passport kasi his cousin was also named Jose Mercado. So, under the name of Jose Mercado, he bought a ticket to Spain, to Madrid, and shipped Rizal there. So, I think Rizal at that time he was shipped was like 15, 16 years old. Can you imagine? A lone 15, 16-year-old making your way up to Spain. But when he got there, he not only sculpted, he painted, he did poetry, and then later on, he wrote the two most crucial novels that will change Philippine history. Okay, but just so you know, because I need you guys to understand this, Rizal never wanted us to be independent. He enjoyed Spain and Europe so much. He saw, wow, this is culture. This is what I want. This is, kumbaga, you're a provinciano and tinapong kita sa BGC. Di parang, wow, di ba parang ganon? He wanted that. And he wanted that for his countrymen. He didn't want to be independent. He wanted also the supports that Spain could give. But those supports were only given to the Spanish citizens. I mean, I want the same thing for us. Okay, so next slide. Luna and Hidalgo, both very influential in the art scene of that time, even if they were very Eurocentric, because at that time, that was the acceptable ones. However, they are not national artists because they're French citizens. So if you guys want to be national artists, you guys have to be Filipino citizens. As much as they didn't want to return home because they hated back home, they didn't like the culture that was happening. Some of their friends were such kiss asses to the Spanish, so ayaw nila ng ganon. And they decided, but there are still the others who didn't like this, so they used their art to express their protests. But they didn't want to go home. Luna did not come home. Hidalgo came home, I think, once lang before he died, and then that's it. They were all buried in Paris. Okay, so here is La Parisienne. If you look here, who is this? It's alam ko ito si Rizal eh. This is Rizal. I think this is Mariano Ponce, and I forgot who this one is, but yeah, it's them. All right, so La Solidaridad, No Limitang Here. So those are some of the influences. Now, let's go to Spoliarium, one of the greatest treasures, artistic treasures natin. But actually, La Parisienne is more expensive. But Spoliarium is very big. It's 7 meters long by 4 meters high. If you go to the National Museum, you will see it there. It is that big. It is one of Luna's greatest paintings. It was sold at auction in Hong Kong, where we purchased it for, I think, $24 million. The same exact amount that was paid to purchase the Philippines 100 years ago. So, yeah. And then we took it home here to become our national treasure because, as much as he is not a national artist, he was very instrumental in the war effort. So, even if he did not join the fighting, like his brother joined the fighting, he did not. He used his influence and his paintbrush in protest. Okay, so a different story naman for what's this? Antonio Luna. Antonio Luna studied pharmacy in Spain. He was very good at it, such that they got him in Germany to become an associate professor there. But he's like, wait, my other friends are doing the war effort thing. I should go home. When he got home, he got captured for being a spy. He was not a spy, not back then. So when they captured him, they tortured him, and one of the things na ano was he sort of spilled the beans na Rizal wrote Noli, Fili, his friends are doing this in Madrid because they tortured him. So because yung based on that testimony, they arrested Rizal, and he felt so guilty that it was his words na got twisted to arrest Rizal. He got so guilty, he decided to join the war fully. Kasi Rizal was his friend. Well, closer si Juan Luna and Rizal, but Rizal often visited him pag nasa Madrid siya kasi that time Rizal loved to travel. He would visit Juan Luna in Paris, and then when he comes back to Spain, alam mo gaano ka deep friendship nila. Yung mga tipong, ay wala kang kasama sa Christmas, o sige, mag-Noche Buena tayo, sama ka sa akin. Ganon, sila-sila lang. Or pag nandun siya sa Paris, utusan siya ni Juan Luna, hey, punta kang Madrid, di ba? Here, some pera. Pakibigay naman yung allowance ni Antonio Luna. So, bigyan niya ng allowance si Rizal na pakibigay sa brother ko pag daan mo. So, ganun niya ka-trust. Di ba? Ganun close sila. Close sila. So, grabe yung kanyang guilt na if that did not happen, if they did not torture him, he would have been the father of Philippine pharmacy because at that time he was revamping UP or what was being UP at that time. Hindi pa siya UP that time. UP Manila, PGH. Okay, so Philippine General Hospital, that was the medical school that where he started to practice. He imported microscopes and all the latest gadgets from Europe. He was revamping things. So he was making a name for himself in pharmacy. He was using pharmacy and yung microbiology in criminology. So nag-start na yung ating criminology here in the Philippines. And kaya yung criminology and NBI nandoon malapit sa UP Manila. And then he got captured, tortured, and Rizal got arrested. And so he's like, join the war. And he joined the war. And when he joined the war, he became one of the greatest generals in the war. Alrighty. Let's go to the Americanization. So that year, we had the biggest battle with the Spanish. It was also called the Mock Battle of Manila Bay. Why? Because the US came in support of us, but they already knew we were already sold. Nabenta na tayo sa kanila. But they didn't want to come in as another conqueror. They want to come in as our hero. So they came in, kunwari, they're here to but they only made a show, like boom, boom, the guns and the cannons, and the Spanish ran away. And we're like, wow, natakot sa inyo. Thank you for helping us. And like, no problem, we're friends. But they didn't know we were already sold in the Treaty of Paris, 1899, which is a year later. So, 1901, they fully took us over. Like, you know, time to go, let's go. And yeah, they had one of the biggest influences in terms of our architecture. So most of the architectures of Manila, like Malate, Paco, Escolta, the old buildings that are there, yung mga gato, Calvo Building, ganyan, Regina Building, First United, you will still see their influences, the very Art Deco influence, because that is the era of the Art Deco, turn of the century up to 1930s. They also have the biggest influences in terms of our education system. So what they first did is nagpadala sila ng boats of teachers called the Thomasites. Thomasites because the first boat that landed here was the SS Thomas. They came with teachers to spread education and democracy. But of course, those are all propaganda. So they came, they viewed the indigenous and the natives as inferior, as did the Spanish, and so they're like, we'll eradicate that and use English as our main language. So even Spanish was taken out of the curriculum. So, which was okay with us because not everybody spoke Spanish. Only the mestizos and the upper class spoke Spanish. And there were 90% who were not. But, iba naman ang view ng Americans. For the Spanish kasi, only the upper and middle class could study. The lower class did not. In the Americanization, ang way of thinking nila, no, 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 no. We have to educate everyone, even the poorer class. So for us, we found that something good because even the lower class can now study. So everybody was taught in English. So even the public schools are taught in English. Kaya everybody is dual language here in the Philippines. Everyone can understand English and Tagalog or their dialects. Ngayon, the DepEd is trying to do the mother tongue. Mother tongue meaning from kinder up to grade 3, you will study in the language that you were born in. So kung ano man yung area na yon, let's say kung you're in Cebu, edi Bisaya lahat. And if you're in Benguet, kung ano man yung ano nila, tongue nila doon and so on and so forth. So in Manila, Tagalog. So ganun. I'm not sure all schools are doing that. They proposed it pero parang hindi lahat eh. Kasi sometimes it's so hard to change the curriculum and nandiyan na lahat ng mga materials. So, yeah. Spanish was taken out. So, the Americans also brought the pensionado system. The pensionado system is, it's like a scholarship. It's not pension, ha? The pensionado system is a scholarship grant they give to, at first, they only gave that to specific families in the Philippines to appease them. Like, di ba, binenta pati ang Mindanao. Of course, umalma ang Mindanao. Excuse me, hindi kami part ng Spain. Bakit mo kami binenta? And they're like, no, 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 here. To appease you, lahat ng mga prince and princesses mo will give them a scholarship to the States. Anong gusto mo? Lawyer, nurse, doctor, and our females, uy, open to us. So lahat ng mga princesses natin nagiging doktor or nurse. Bihira ang lawyer, mostly nurse and doctors. They were the first Filipina doctors. Not nurses because we had a lot of nurses even back then, but the first Filipina doctors na babae were from there. Even yung mga big names in like yung mga the who's who of Manila. Ganun din. Parang, excuse me, I thought you were here to help us. Why in the world are you conquering us? No, 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 no. Here, let's appease you. Give you scholarship. All your kids are going to get scholarship in the US. In the US. So, there you guys have it. And many pensionados were also artists because wala pang fine arts dito sa atin. So, dun sa States nag-study ng fine arts. Okay, Japanese occupation. Fast forward 40 years later. So we kind of lived with the American rule because every time they did something bad to us, they gave us a handout na like ganyan. Ayaw natin ng ganan. Oh, we'll give you scholarship. Ayaw natin ng ganan. Oh, no, no, no. We'll make you public buildings. We don't like the we'll give you statues and parks and ganyan. So, tayo mga utoto, we rolled with it. All right. So, Japanese occupation, 1941 to 1945. Also, World War II. There was a change in our education system when they invaded. So they invaded, Pearl Harbor happened, the Americans retreated because, contrary to popular belief, of the 8,000 American population in the Philippines, only around 1 to 3,000 were soldiers. The rest of them were private citizens who were here to trade or retire here, find better opportunities here. They weren't soldiers. Konti lang soldiers natin. So when the Japanese invaded and Pearl Harbor happened, they had to retreat because any Americans that they caught, they slaughtered. And not just Americans. The Japanese slaughtered anybody they didn't like, including Chinese. So I knew some Chinese families who were heavily slaughtered just for being Chinese. Galit sila eh. Anyways, back then, so the education system kind of changed. So it kind of followed the Japanese way. Nothing American is allowed. So the cinema, because we already had cinema back then, erase, not allowed, no American media allowed. Filipino media only if it's screened na walang propaganda there. We had to dress modestly. All the girls had to be like, ano to, yung ganyan, yung ano, um, guys, long pants, you putting shorts, yung ganyan. So the push for Philippinization, because there was already a Philippinization movement, it went underground. Okay, so even back then, we were already starting to question what is Filipino art for us. So the Japanese era slowed the progress of art and literature because all Filipino and American media were banned. So everything was screened, not no anti-Japanese propaganda. But there was an art form that flourished back then. It was called vaudeville, also known as vaudevillian theater. So vaudevillian theater is what influenced yung ating That's Entertainment, Wawawi, Wawawin ba yun? And those type of ano, yung mga Itbulaga and all those. Variety theater, variety shows, very slapstick. So whatever you see in, yeah, That's Entertainment, Itbulaga, Wawawin, those type, those ang origin yun was vaudeville. So vaudeville, let me type it here. Ginawa na nating vaudeville, but it's vaudeville. That one, vaudeville. So in vaudevillian theater, it's variety show. So may konting dancing, may konting singing, may konting jokes, may parang skit na slapstick. So it's like mix. And we tried to make it lighthearted. We tried to make it nakakatawa. Kasi kung masyado siyang serious, papansinin ka ng ano eh, ng mga Japanese. Now, they also had to like, what's this? But we needed entertainment. So even mga hotels had vaudevilles in them. Kasi nga bawal yung mga ano. So, pwede naman yung sa mga gabi, kakanta-kanta lang. Pero di ba, siniscreen din nila nung kinakanta mo eh. But with vaudeville, because short-short lang yung mga kanta mo, and then mukas lang, patawa lang, hindi nila alam na what we're singing is actually mocking them or things like that, or ano na pala, political or propaganda. Kasi, ano eh, parang happy-happy, joke-joke, diyan nag-originate lahat nun. After the war, 1949, 46, we were granted our independence by the Americans. Or are we? Sabi nila. Anyways, in 1950, there was a push for the Philippinization of theater. That was when we decided our theater should be in Tagalog. Because even back then, our theater was either Spanish or English. Both the lower class cannot understand. So if we put it in, of course, nobody, ewan ko bakit nobody thought of it putting it in Bisaya. There were more Bisaya speakers than Tagalog. However, Bisaya speakers can understand Tagalog speakers. Therefore, let's put it in ano. And the movement actually spread to the visual arts. Okay, so 1966, we were building the cultural center of the Philippines, but it did not get completed until 1969. That is because naubusan sila ng pera. There were these group, like a ten group 10 people who wanted a CCP. So CCP back then was private. Ngayon, it's NGO. So there is a board of trust. Now, because they needed money to complete it, they actually went to Imelda Marcos. And Imelda Marcos gave them some money, and it got completed the same time as the other buildings dun sa likod. So, Coconut Palace, um, what do you call this? Folk Arts Theater, PICC, and all that. So, people attributed CCP to Imelda, which is not quite true. It's, what's this? What do you call this? She had a hand in it kasi nagbigay nga siya ng pera. Pero it was not her idea. Okay, it was already there. It just wasn't completed. Now, they call it brutalist architecture. Brutalist architecture, yung pure concrete. Here's the thing. Here are the architects, by the way. See, even we have Leandro Locsin, and who is a national artist for architecture, who made that. They say there were more people who died in the completion of CCP than in the folk arts theater. It's just that since the folk arts theater was controversial because Imelda's like, kulang ng time, just bury them there. So I guess they dug them out in CCP, and in folk arts theater they did not. So yeah, I'll leave you the ghost story. Okay, so during the American occupation, there were already the re-Filipinization. Pero hindi nga siya natuloy because war came. So what is the true global Pinoy? The true global Pinoy is actually multicultural. I'll leave you to that. Now you will ask, what is exactly Filipino art? It's a chop suey of everything. So, for the NCCA, Filipino art should be made by Filipino. That is the mandate of NCCA. Kaya ito, in this statement alone, Filipino art should be made by Filipino. Kaya nawala, uh, the following people did not become national artists. Juan Luna, Felix Resurrection Hidalgo, Pasita Abad, Anita Magsaysayho, movers and shakers of the art industry, but they are not national artists because they were all not citizens of the Philippines. Yeah, they gave up their citizenship midway through life. Especially Anita Magsaysayho, who traveled a lot because they owned shipping companies. So she traveled a lot. She became a British citizen. Yeah, because Hong Kong at that time was British citizenship. Canada, so she became a Canadian. Brazil, so she became Brazilian. I think bumalik siya to Canada at the time of her death. Therefore, hindi siya naging um, Filipino citizen. So kung bumalik sana siya sa Filipino citizen, baka binigyan natin siya posthumously. Same thing with Pasita Abad. All right. Okay. The post-colonial influences natin. So after the colonial era, there were some things that defined us or colored our perspective in the arts industry. Martial law being a big part of it. Chinoy literature because we have to say, hey, yung mga Chinoy pala, hindi yung pinansin. Modern literature, modern TV and movies, Netflix, and the news. The news will also color our perspective and influences in the art industry. This is two books who are from the what's this martial law era. Primitivo Mijares and Raymond Bonner is an American. So this one is more of American pero in that era, marami din happened, you know. We can attribute something nice to Imelda din, which is pinauso niya yung butterfly sleeve as truly Filipina fashion. She was very fashionable even at that time. Something just twisted along the way, but I will leave that up to you just in case you're pro or anti, and it's up to you. But what I'm saying, she had a vision. What is that vision? She had a vision. But it still colored people's perspective, and it did influence a lot for the good or for the better of the industry, the art industry, literature, movies, and art or visual art. So here are the good things that we should attribute to Imelda, the Terno being the biggest one of all. PICC, Folk Arts Theater, Coconut Palace, Kidney Center, Heart Center, Lung Center, and MMDA. Na-establish ang MMDA because of her. She wanted to beautify Metro Manila. So what Marcos did is She became the governor of Metro Manila. As governor, you have the task of beautifying Metro Manila. So yung mga islands in the highway, yung mga trees dyan sa highway, mga ganyan, those fell under MMDA because those fell under her. So siya nag-start niyang essentially what is now MMDA. Okay, so there are some other modern influences. Popular media, TV, Netflix, Disney Plus, Prime, movies, all that. Social media, hindi mo matatanggal yan, sorry. Asian influence, our biggest influences right now is Korea, Japan, and China. And then your Western influence, mainly US and UK. Mainly, but not limited to. So, by news, here is another one. This was the time during the EJK. So, during the EJK killings, this is the book that my friend wrote, My Fate According to the Butterfly. So, in which case, it is set during the time of the EJK, but it's heavily influenced with Filipino superstition. So this little girl who is 10 or 13 believed na 'di ba kapag nadapuan ka daw ng black na butterfly, you're gonna die. I think meron something like that na belief or something. So she thought she was gonna die and she's like, "Okay, before I die, I'm gonna complete some tasks in my life before I die." One is to matchmake her sister and the other one is to find her missing father who was actually what's this a victim of the EJK. So, yeah. So, see, the news influenced the book. All right. So, these are also what is influencing us now. AI, as much as some artists hate it, the industry welcomes it. Even professional artists welcome it because it challenges them. Meta. Meta is a combination of blockchain and social media and VR. So smart everything, smart watch, smart furniture, smart phone. So everything that can be controlled via an app. Then you have AR and VR, augmented reality and virtual reality, streaming services, content services. By the way, they say we are in the age of content. So everything we do now should be made content. Social media and everything else na art is steadily on the rise online. So what can you do? What can you do nga talaga? You have to find your own voice. When I ask my white centric friends and white friends, what is this own voice? And they're like, simple lang yan. Own voice means non-white voice. In other words, they need you guys to show them that there is more to this world than just being white. Because our Western centric view is no longer just the Western centric view because like tayo mga Pilipino, there are more of us out there than there are white people out there. We are all over the world. So there are more colored people than white people. Therefore, we should have our own voice. See these are some of the movers and shakers of our comic industry here in the Philippines. Culture Crash, you guys will not be able to remember this. It came out 10, 15 years ago and it was phenomenal. Yes, it was heavily influenced by anime. So our styles here were kinda anime, but at the same time, not quite. But at the same time, we have ingrained Filipino influences in it. So one day isang diwa is very what's this yung mga ano natin creatures of Philippine legend, Pasig. So Pasig is futuristic, apocalyptic, pero they have the esclavo system. So esclavo like slave. Cat's Trail, yes, very influenced by ano, pero it's it's still ano, it still has that Pinoyness to it that you just cannot put into na hindi to galing sa Japan. It's just the Pinoy humor. And then they had Kobori Kikiam. By Kikiam pa lang, alam mo na it's very Pinoy because that is Kikiam is a very Chinoy food. Yeah, most of them who worked on this are Chinoys. Um, Kikiam is a Chinoy food. You can't find it in China, but you can find it here in our Chinatown. Now, what influences do you think gave way to Trece? Even Budgette said, now without Culture Crash, he didn't think he could make 13, or he couldn't release 13, because Culture Crash really was a phenomenon at that time. It's just that naubusan sila ng printing budget. Even back then, kasi they really wanted na abot kaya ng students ang isang magazine. So it was 100 pesos per magazine. And then sometime later, they had to increase it to 150 pesos. And back then, it was kind of mabigat for a student to pay 150 pesos. So medyo humina siya. So they had to stop that. But each of the artists continued their work separately. Alrighty. So what is your artist voice? Ano bang iyo? How can you make your own artist voice? Now, Teacher Maita gave you the influences that is there. Pockets of influences, some you are aware, some you are not aware. Well, what do you need to be a competent Filipino artist to begin with? Well, you have to study and you have to be proactive. You have to study because you can't just rely on one skill. So, research is the key, and do not stop studying. You have to be not just multicultural, but multi styled artists. So, even if your style can be just one style, but you have to have different mediums. Otherwise, maunahan ka ng AI. Then you have to be proactive. Okay? Don't just wait for opportunities to come to you. Doesn't work like that. If opportunities don't go to you, you have to go to the opportunity. Or you make some opportunities on your own. So there are some things that I share as a group. Those are opportunities. You just have to click them and see na, kaya ko kaya to? What is this? Is it a film? Is it an essay writing contest? Is it a painting contest? Go. Join as much as you can. Oh, hey, so what are the barriers that hinder you anyway? Lack of motivation, lack of vision, and lack of values. Lack of motivation, that's actually up to you, din eh. Nobody can motivate you but you. Even your parents can't motivate you. However, when you're grown up, hunger can be a motivation. We've had artists before here. Huh? I will share a little bit about how we were starting. We didn't get clients kagad. When my sister set up her company, at first sole proprietor lang siya. So me and my other sister were working under her. Pero we just talagang sucked at getting clients. So we ended up just getting any client, then no client. So we had a client, and so most of our artists, because we could not pay them yet, we were starting palang. Either we did it ourselves or we hired freelancers. Okay, so here comes the hunger can be a motivation part. Okay, so isa sa mga client namin, that time kasi it was big. It was big at that time. I think that client was paying us something like $40 per page of comic, black and white. However, it's kind of porn comics. Well, not very explicit, pero yung nakikita yung boobs, ganon. And then gusto niya kind of looks like Archie comic style with very big boobs that bounces. Ganon yung style na he wants. So we went to our pool of freelancing artists and offered it to them. And one of the artists there said, sige na nga, I'll do it kasi sayang. And I think we paid him 450 pesos. So kanya pesos, we earned in dollars. 450 pesos per page. At that time, that was the standard rate of the black and white. Ngayon, hindi na. Mm, for freelancers, especially kung meron ka ng portfolio na mapakita, I think a minimum of 1,000 pesos. So there. Hope you guys know that. 1,000 pesos per page. The better you are, of course, the more you can demand the price. However, he was starving and he has a family to feed. And 10 or I think 20 pages a week, sayang eh. I think it's like 10 pages a week. So, kaya daw niya. Kasi if you're a professional, kaya mo yan. Mabilis ka dapat mag-sketch. And black and white lang naman. So, 10 pages a week is doable. So, 10 pages a week for 5. So, 4, 5 times 4, di ba? So, sabi niya, I'll take it. I'm starving. Don't have any, I need to, And then, 2, 3 months later, umiiyak na siya because I hate it. I'm drawing porn comics. And he hates it. And we're like, we don't like it either, but we can't find other. Oh, we did find other clients, pero not his type of I mean, The other client that we had was a book illustration, but hindi Archie comic style. She the client wanted it like parang chibi anime style na cute. So my sister did it herself. So, we had clients pero we couldn't pick clients, and basta hanggang natapos lang yung commission na yon. After nun, that artist never wanted to see us again. And I can't blame him. But yeah, you can't kasi when you couldn't find anything, and yung ganyan, we were starting, we didn't know how to find other opportunities yet, not like we do now. But back then, 'di ba, parang ang hirap. So kahit anong dumating sa'yo na project, sige na lang, kainin mo na lang, kahit ganyan-ganyan. But not that we stuck to our vision. Ano bang vision namin? Our vision was to create this type of work. At that time, not very many companies did that. Yung work for hire na art, work for hire na ganon. So now they know there's us. And we can do whatever, artwork, comic book, what's this, games. So even I have designed games for clients. I had did artwork for clients. So that was our vision. We stuck to that. And we also wanted to put, of course, our stamp of being very Filipino in it. Because my sister often went to San Francisco, Europe, to try to sell our services. And makikita mo na, oh my gosh, kung tayo, magkano tayo? Like $20, $40. Ang mga Chinese and Vietnamese is like $1, $3 compared to our services. What can we give that they can? So first of all, English as our medium of speaking is no longer a problem. 'Di ba? Gusto nila tayo as a call center dito because even if India speaks English, they can't understand Indian English. They can't understand Singaporean English or Singlish. However, Filipinos who speak English, they can understand. Kaya most of the call center that requires voice is still with us here. Also, we are multilingual. We have call centers here that speak both English and Japanese. We have call centers that speak both Chinese and English. We have call centers in Spanish and English. So we are actually because dual language na tayo, so we have to really thank the Americans din. Kaya tayo dual language. And if you're a dual language, adapting a third or fourth language is actually easier. Kita mo yung mga Americans, diba? They cannot speak French or anything else. And no matter how much you try to train them, parang mahirap. Tayo, since birth, we already hear our parents being dual language. Iba pa yung mga parents natin who speak two or three dialects plus English and Tagalog. Iba pa yung mga parents na English, Filipino, or English, Tagalog, Chinese dialect. Here in Davao, that's very common. And even in one sentence, you have all four. So we already have that. That is our advantage. That could be part of your advantage. Right. So now we need values. That's what I see right now, lack of values. We lack discipline and morals. You really have to be disciplined, especially when you train your hands, because our curriculum is very fast paced. We don't have time to really drill into you. And nagko-complain ng parents. That's the honest truth, guys. When I was in art school, 17 years old, kasi wala pang senior high back then. So 17 years old, I was doing 50 plates a term, and a term in Lasal is 3 months. And then pinapaulit pa ng teacher ko kapag pangit yung plate. And kailangan yung mga borders ko dapat perfect. Kung hindi siya perfect, do it again. So makala siya sa paper. Dito, konting ganyan, magko-complain ka agad kayo sa mga parents niya. It's like, and then your parents like, Teacher Maita, mawalda sa ano. Hindi ba pwedeng digital na lang para hindi tayo mag-spend ng paper? The sad part is for artists, hindi. You really spend a lot of paper waste. So why don't you just have a waste basket for paper na ano, para you can recycle that and turn it into recycled paper. Kasi guys, ganyan talagang pagiging artist. You really need to practice your hand. And if you're not practisado on paper, it will show in your digital side. So if you are studying in Japan, so my eldest sister studied in Japan animation, they're not allowed to touch the stylus if they did not perfect by hand Drawing. So, what's your brand? How do you make your artist brand, your Filipino artist brand? You have to have a mission. So, how do you want to become an artist? That's your mission. You have to have a vision. What do you see for yourself? This will ultimately motivate you kasi. So, how are you going to get to your mission, ba? Or how will your mission get to your vision? So, what do you see for yourself, ba? That's your ultimate goal. Values. What do you hold true? So, as an artist, as a Filipino, what do you hold true? So, you have to sit down and list the things that you want in life. I want to be the greatest visual artist ever. I want to be a very well known multimedia artist. Or I want to be a filmmaker who competes with Steven Spielberg. Ay, ganon. You have to list down what do you want in life. Because if you say, I don't know what I like in life, edi dyan palang talo ka na. So sit down and find out. It can change, but at least if you write something down, you have a direction. Then you list down your skills. What do I have in my skill set? Sulatin nyo, I can draw. I know how to use Photoshop. I know how to use Canva. I know how to do this. I know how to do that. Mm. Then list the skills that you want to have. Anong wala ka pa? Kulang pa ako sa cinematography. Kulang pa ako sa ito. I need to know how to do Lightroom photography. I need to know how to do ganyan. I want to know how to play with traditional filters. Kasi ultimately, what you want here, you will put in here eh. To achieve this, these are the skills that I need. And then from here, titingnan mo, i-check, i-cross, ano mo na, ito, check, 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 check. And then you will research on what you can or how you can achieve certain skills and unlock them. Para ito, nandito na siya. The list of skills that you have. Okay, so if there's any questions, now is the time to ask them so we can end our session. Question? Nakamute ka, Enzo.
I was just testing my mic po, Miss
Okay.
Maita.
Alrighty. So next week we will dive into the 21st century skills. So Enzo, you might like this. Because this one
Yes.
I've been drilling into grade 11s. So my grade 12s kind of have an idea already. You might be interested in the 21st century skills. And yes, it will involve a lot of the new skills that we have now. All right. So thank you guys for joining me in this acceleration class. Hope you guys enjoyed and I hope I opened your mind. All right. Thank you guys. See you next week.
Thank you very much.